Welcome to the American Woodshop. I'm Scott Phillips, and today it's on to antique repair and restoration. This show is all about easy fixes for those classic treasures. So stay with us to learn how to do your own repairs today.
The American Woodshop with Scott Phillips is brought to you by
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
Easy Wood Tools, American-made tools for all skill levels. For every woodworking reason. For every woodworking age. Rycon Power Tools, Pro Tools for tool pros. RyconTools.com, proud supporters of American Woodshops everywhere.
Today we're going to cover quick fixes for antiques, the easy way to do it. And whenever you have a piece that falls apart because the old hide glue became brittle in time, they actually boiled animal hides to make the glue, and that's what was used on pieces prior to 1900. Well, it falls apart in time, especially when things happen like cross-grain gluing. And what that means is the wood grain is running this way on the block and this way on the leg that are joined together. And over time, wood movement, wood expands and contracts constantly, especially in modern homes with humidities that fluctuate with the seasons, and that destroys that glue joint. So here are some fixes that we're going to get into today. Now, the key when I go to do a glue up like this to repair this leg and bring this all back together, make it strong again, is to realize that modern glues are actually stronger than the wood itself. When we prep the joint correctly, which simply means taking a brass brush and getting off as much of that old hide glue as you can without changing the profiles of the wood that you're going to re-glue. And then the other thing about this is, and I'm down to 90% bare wood, you have to clean that surface that's going to get re-glued thoroughly, and then use a tack cloth to get off the residue. Okay, and then what I'll do is use an acid brush to size the joint. Now what does that mean? That means that I'm putting glue on both parts of the joint that's going to be bonded together. So on this surface, I brush it out thoroughly, and I want to do it in light coats. And the neat thing about this process is, by letting it air dry and not slapping the parts together quickly, you get a stronger joint. Okay, so it goes on that area right there. That looks good. And it goes on the mating surface here. And this is a yellow aliphatic resin glue that's water-based. Never let these freeze. It changes the bonding strength of the glue. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is let that, I need a little bit more on there. Getting the right amount of glue to have proper squeeze out is key. Okay, to make that joint strong again. And I guarantee my work for life. And you can too if you follow these same techniques. So I'm going to let that dry out for just a second. And then up here, this glue block originally had some glue down, but it's just going to fail again because of cross-grain wood movement. So we're going to use a cleat inside and use some screws to add some strength to that. So the only part that gets glued is right there. So let's go on and let that air dry for just a second. And over here, I want to show you this phenomenal product. This is a two-part epoxy, and that's fresh right there. And it's the dark color. And when you knead this with your fingers to get a good blend of the two epoxies together, always wear gloves. That's important. So here we go. I'm going to knead this together thoroughly, get a nice blend for this table that we're going to repair. And as I move this around, you can see I stripped this down outside using a citrus-based stripper and got that back down to bare wood. This is a piece from the 30s or 40s. It's a veneered piece, and you can see right here on the edge, come right on in here, where the veneer has really busted out. Now I could use a lacquer burn stick to fill that, or I could use this epoxy. Anybody can do this. A burn stick, well, that's an art. So what I'm doing right now, and that epoxy is actually warm to the touch, and that has been thoroughly cleaned out, sanded and brushed out with a brush. And I'm going to overfill that. And do not do this bare-fingered, whatever you do. And we're going to let that cure out. Okay, and we'll sand that down. Okay, in a bit. But now that that's in place and that can cure, and that really needs to cure for about half an hour before we can fuss with it. That's overfilled. That's a good way to do repair. Okay, and I want to seal this back up with the paper so it's reusable. Good stuff, and it comes in all sorts of colors. So be sure to, when you go to the retail woodworking store, get the right color for what you want. And I'll show you how to stain the woods to get a perfect color match in just a second here. But now this is ready to go on. That glue has tacked just long enough. And when I draw that tight, I'm getting a little bit of squeeze out, but not much. Going to wipe off the excess here. This is water-based glue, so getting it on my fingers is not a big deal. And by wiping off that excess right now, I don't have to deal when it's super hard. Okay, so that's getting just the right amount of squeeze out right there. So it's ready for a clamp. So because this is curved, you can always figure out a way to put a brace in here to make clamping better. And because this turning is a delicate detail, I want to use this padded clamp to hold that in place. And then what I can do is bring up this type of bar clamp that has an auto action, and that's perfect right there. You don't want to over clamp because it can press the glue right out of the joint. And then up here, just to line everything up, I'm using an Auto Max to hold that exactly where it needs to be. So we'll let that cure out here. Now, let's do a quick little finishing workshop where we make some shellac. Now, shellac flakes come from Pakistan or India, and these are on plum trees, and the lac beetle produces this to communicate with other lac beetles. And then they harvest the branches and they get the flakes in huge sheets, and this is called de-waxed shellac, which is the highest quality that you can get. When you buy shellac, make sure you buy de-waxed shellac. And so basically what I'm going to do right now is show you the simple way to make your own shellac. Why do that? Homemade shellac, in this case garnet, has a cherry-like quality to it when you put it on mahogany or even cherry. This is my favorite finish on cherry. You can buy pre-made shellac, but not garnet. It's always amber or clear. They call it water white. Now if you look in here, you can see that I just added enough alcohol, denatured alcohol, to just barely cover those flakes. And the process goes like this. You stir it thoroughly with a good stir stick, but listen to this. It sounds like cereal. And that's kind of going to stay that way for the first hour. So set it in the sunlight, someplace safe, away from any heat source, so that it warms it up gently. Stir it again. Wait 24 hours, stir it again, set it back in the sunlight. On the second day, do not stir it. You pour off the top 3/4 of that solution into another plastic keep bucket, never metal because the acids in the shellac react with the metal. okay, always plastic, and mix up small batches so you can use it all after you've created it. And that's what we'll use on this beautiful table. Okay, so we'll let that settle out, and we'll give this a couple hours to cure out, and then it's on sanding. Okay, now you can see that is rock hard, and it only took really half an hour for that to get that way. And you can also see there are some stains on this ribbon mahogany top, and what I'm going to do with this random orbital sander is work through the 80 grit first with the grain, get this smoothed out, and then I'll work through 100, 120, 180, then 220 grits working with the grain and get this surface prepped. So let's get this ready for a finish. Line up the holes, away you go. And N95 dust mask, whatever you do, when you're using power tools, any tools in your wood shop, be sure to read, understand, and follow all the instructions that come with the tools and products you use. These are safety glasses. Now let's take a look at that. You can hear that this is on a dust extractor, which takes care of virtually all the sawdust. Still wear a dust mask when you sand, and use a tack cloth lightly. You don't want to transfer the resins from the tack cloth to the wood itself, and that looks really good. And this is an old table, so don't try to make it look new. And this veneer is thin. I've got a little area that I have to repair like we did this one over here. But when we shellac it, that will make all the sins of color variation go away. So the surface is ready right now. And this is a finish sander, which I like to use with the grain after I've already taken it down with the random orbital. Now there's another issue with this table that you're going to find with many antiques that you're restoring, and that is it's wobbly. And how am I going to fix that? It's real simple. I'm going to use this chair repair glue. It's watered down. It has an injector right here, big syringe, and you charge that up with the glue like that, and it doesn't take a lot. I have a big syringe that gives me just the right amount of glue in the joints. And so what I'll do right now is wherever the joints have come apart, I get the right amount of glue in there. And I've cleaned those out with a vacuum as best I can. And I do not want more than just enough so that when I draw that together with clamps, I get a little bit of squeeze out. Need to get a good clamp on that. So I'll get the clamps on this, let this cure up, and then we can use, after it's dried, a nylon pad with a little bit of abrasive in it to just work with a block of wood to touch up the rest of the leg assembly, and then it'll be ready for a finish. Okay, we're halfway home. Now, whatever you do, when you put a new finish on this, make sure it's tacked clean. Surface prep is key. So I'll let that cure out just a little bit more, let that glue get a little bit stronger. And as we go to repair the rest of this Victorian nightstand, well, I already brushed out the Goodwood glue here and have it on the mating piece, and that's tacked for about 5 minutes. And why do you let that do that? Because this next step in getting this support block on there, when you put a clamp on this and secure it flush to the bottom edge, what happens now is that block doesn't skate around. If you put that block on there when the glue is still viscous, it's going to be all over the place. I'll let that cure out because that will go up in this space, and I can do that in about half an hour. But see, this is a glue block just like this block over here, and what I'm going to do is counterbore this because this block, you can see the glue has already lifted or separated. Right on center. And I just want to counter sink that. So the screw head goes flush. That's smoking. Love the smell of that. That's just fabulous. And I press it down, making sure that the screw is only long enough to mate into this bottom board right here. That's key. You don't want it going all the way through. That's nice and tight. And that's to stop the other legs from breaking out like the one that we were repairing right now. So I'll get that done. Clean out those shavings, whatever you do. Give that bit a chance to do its job. Okay, and the other good thing, make sure you put wax on the threads of these long screws. And ease that right on down in there. Ease it back up. It's self-tapping. That's good, just like that. Thankfully, the length is key. We'll screw this one in place. And then, through the magic of video, half an hour later, we'll get the front piece cleated in. The glue has really set. It's going to get rock hard in 24 hours, but now that's solid. And what I'll do is take the clamps off of this glue up, and the original finish is looking really good. And there's the repair. You can barely see it. And now that's going to be rock solid. Now, let me set this on the ground so you can see the easiest way to repair these skirts. Okay, that's a ginkgo tree. I can tell by the leaf pattern and the ginkgo fruit. And beautiful carving all the way around. And originally what they did was they glued that to these legs. The grain's running this way on this piece, that way on that piece, cross-grain gluing. It's never going to last. So I'm going to line it up, get the best fit right there, and now I can draw that tight. And it is now blocked in a way, back it out, draw it in, that it's there to stay. And I'll show you how to bring the finish on this back to life. But first, let's go finish the other table with some shellac. Time to use a high volume, low pressure spray system. And what I'm going to do is use a 50% 50-50 solution of shellac, meaning I added an equal measure of alcohol to the cut of shellac that we made earlier. And I put a little bit of red trans-tint dye into the chamber. The more red trans-tint, the redder the color. I want a color somewhere right in between this middle color and the amber shellac to match the mahogany on this Pembroke style table. And by the way, Field Guide to American Antique Furniture, Butler, fabulous resource to identify this as a Pembroke with an Empire pull on it. So original date, I guess, would be around 1820 on a table like this. But again, this is a reproduction, so honestly, this came to life in the 1930s to 1940s. I can tell that by the veneer work and also the hardware. So gloves on, because I am spraying shellac, and safety glasses with side shields. And here's how it goes. You turn on the air supply. You dial the point all the way in until this stops. Back it off, 2 clicks, and then you do your test spray. And right now this is set up for spraying the corners, a spot pattern, and the edges. And when I dial it in, it gives me a fan pattern that's vertical. So watch what happens. If I want more material to come out, I simply back this off just a hair. Let's do the front. I'm not worried about where the hardware goes, where it's black, because the hardware will cover that. We'll let that dry for a second. Put it up on painter point. That's looking good. Now, again, it's a vertical spray. When I twist it all the way around on the front, this will give me a horizontal pattern. Now watch. Looks really great. There's where the patches were. And go light. Light coats are right. I'll pull this forward just a bit. It works better if you can keep the nozzle about 8 inches back from the material that you're spraying. And you can see you want to keep it absolutely uniform in your spray pattern. When I spray, I do not spray until I'm pulling that trigger. I do not keep that trigger pulled. I let it come off when I come off the material. That stops the overspray. With high volume, low pressure systems, 95% of the finish goes on the project. I've got a few dents that I had to live with. That goes with the nature of the beast. Those dents add character. If I would have sanded any more, it would have gone through the veneer. So I'll get this done. And then once the top is dry, I'll set it up on the carousel, and then I'll work on the rest of the frame using the dial on the front of the spray gun to give me whatever pattern gives me the most effective spray. Well, here's the test drive. It's looking really good, but light is right. You want to go with light coats. When you spray, when you brush, when you wipe on. Here's the top, and you can see that that finish has really been absorbed into the pores of that dry wood, and it's really coming back to life. And I like to use a white nylon. White is the fine weave. That's a great way to buff out the raised grain, and that feels really good right there. I'll tack it off again, and then what I'll do is go through 3 more coats, just like this, to build the sheen, work on the legs, and I'll get this all done. So it's off to the races. Again, it's horizontal. Now, I don't have gloves on. I'm not going to touch the piece. I'm doing what's called cross hatching. You go one direction, let it dry. Next time you go 90 degrees to that. And you'll get a very uniform spray pattern that way. Uniform thickness of the finish as well. Susie, what in the world are you up to there?
Just doing some little touch-ups. It's a little touch-up pen, which is what they call it, perfectly named, and they're in an array of colors, and you can just touch up furniture. You know, you get a little minor scratch, you don't have to do any major work. You just use these little touch-up pens.
They do work. Now, this project is ready to cure for a couple of days, and then it gets top coated with a really good wax, in this case, Renaissance wax. Can't beat it. Now, on pieces like this, save the finish. I just use a furniture cleaner, soak it into the brush, get it in there thoroughly. And you know, it's really the cooking oil that floats around through your house. It settles on your furniture over the years. It dulls down that finish. And, you know, dust settles into it. And so once you get it cleaned off with the furniture cleaner, let it dry. As long as it's not on bare wood, you're in business. And then once in a blue moon, just put orange oil on top of that to bring it back to life. So those are some wonderful tips for you. Now,
Really are.
Speaking of bringing things back to life, let's bring this marble top back up to this. And look at that. Now that's an heirloom worth saving. And I hope you agree, these are simple tips that anyone could do. Now next week, it's on to recycled wood projects. We're going to make a beautiful headboard together that anyone can use.
That's right. Beautiful job on the table.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
next
See
week.
ya.
Woodcraft, since 1928, providing traditional and modern woodworking tools and supplies to generations of craftsmen. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Craig, from the first cut to the final assembly, providing woodworkers with products that help simplify woodworking challenges. Craig.
Easy Wood Tools, American-made tools for all skill levels. For every woodworking reason. For every woodworking age. Rycon Power Tools, Pro Tools for tool pros. RyconTools.com, proud supporters of American woodshops everywhere.
For more information behind the scenes at the American Woodshop, go to our website for complete details on tips and like us on Facebook.
Hey ho, and away we'll go. One day, laddie,